Alrighty, guys. What is the date? It is Monday, January 24th at 10 o'clock in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. Thanks for joining on the webinar here. My name is Alex Lepore. I'm the Regional Southwest Sales Manager here at Fortress Power. We're a lithium battery provider based outside of Philadelphia. Today's presentation is really to give everybody a high-level conversation and discussion regarding Fortress Power and talk a little bit more about some of the applications we can handle here at Fortress, along with inviting everybody to the Solar Power Colorado conference held in Denver next week, which we will be attending at booth 123. Very easy to remember, 123. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen and I have a few slides I'm going to go through here today as follows. Can everybody see my screen here? One with the Fortress Power lithium storage. Perfect. Right on. So today we're going to be going through a few things. We're talking about some of the different applications we can use here at Fortress Power, along with who Fortress Power is and some of the experiences we've had in energy storage. We're going to go through some of the different inverter compatibility that we have here at Fortress Power, along with some of the things that make Fortress Power different. So really going to start at a very high level and jump into the details of our product line and show you guys why we are different and why I consider Fortress Power for your next bid. So like I mentioned, we are a lithium battery provider. We're actually headquartered out in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're focused on the residential and commercial markets with options scaling from 5 to 370 kilowatt hours at the moment. So we're based out of Southampton, right next to the city of Philadelphia. And we were founded back in 2016 by a group of investment bankers and solar veterans. As you guys can see here on the right, this is our headquarters. It's a 30,000 square foot facility for R&D, sales, and logistics. And we do have 3 other warehouses throughout the US to keep shipping costs as low as possible. So being based in the US, we've certainly done installations in the continental US, but have also done installations in Canada, the Central Caribbean, South America, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So we definitely have a lot of experience with batteries as one of your battery experts. We were one of the key battery suppliers for SEPTA, which is a local railway company that is based out of Philadelphia, Hydro-Quebec, which is a Canadian utility company, and the Navajo Reservation, which is a very large off-grid project based in Texas, Oklahoma, and Nevada. So we have a lot of experience, like I mentioned, and speaking to some of the applications we can tie our batteries with, we can do most, if not all, of the common applications on the market. So certainly you can use your battery to back up your facility, right? During, per the NEC code, if there is an outage and they do not have batteries, your solar will actually stop producing. So the advantage of having a battery on with solar for when the grid goes off is that your solar keeps producing, and certainly you can power the critical loads in your home like the refrigerator, Wi-Fi, lights, etc., etc. So the key one and the most popular one is certainly backing up the facility or backing up your home or business. Then you have the self-supply application. This is where the PV is prohibiting backfeeding to the grid, or they're making the payback for net metering slim to none. If you guys follow the news at all, in California, they're proposing NEM 3.0, and the vote takes place later this week, I believe on the 27th, to where they're basically trying to make the payback for solar zero and making the financial payback for just solar not feasible. So this is where installing a battery will allow customers to maximize their PV production by not sending that electricity back at a cheaper rate, but instead storing it to be used for the AC load in their home or just having it in the event of an outage, right? You then have the time of use. So in Southern California, this is extremely popular where they're billing you for high charges from 4 to 9 p.m. or 5 to 8 p.m. So what folks will do is they'll charge the battery during the day and then discharge it during those peak times. So they essentially get around those high charge times by discharging the battery instead of purchasing from the utility company. You can certainly use this in off-grid if your customers are choosing to move off the grid and achieve true energy independence. They can use the Fortress package to move completely off the grid, and we can also use it in demand reduction, otherwise known as peak shaving. Typically more popular on the commercial aspect of it, but this is certainly something that we can model through Energy Toolbase and see if there is a realistic payback while managing their demand for those commercial property owners, et cetera, et cetera. So most, if not all, of the common applications on the market we can tie Fortress with for all of your different project applications or different scopes of those particular projects you're working on. Now, that said, before jumping into the battery itself, we are working with most of the common 48-volt inverters on the market. So you guys have a lot of flexibility depending on if it's an AC coupled project or even a DC coupled project. And you'll see some very popular names here, including Solarc, Schneider, Outback, Magnum, SMA, Victron, Morningstar, and Midnight. We have established closed loop communication currently with Solarc and Schneider, recently Victron, and we are in the testing process right now with SMA. It is not completed yet, so please mind the double asterisk here. We are still testing for that. When I put this together, I thought it was confirmed, but I just heard right before our call that it is not at the moment. So we have Solarc, Schneider, and Victron. Now, what does this mean for you, right? The closed loop communication means that the battery BMS and the inverter can actually talk with one another. And instead of monitoring the battery via voltage, it actually monitors it via state of charge. So it's a much more accurate way to get true readings on your battery when doing remote monitoring because of that closed loop communication setup. It also will allow you guys to easily install the packages of Solarc and Fortress, for example, because there is no manual parameter setting. It'll basically come in a turnkey package where you can plug and play the inverter with the battery and then be on your way. So instead of spending half a day on site, you can get this set up within 2 to 3 hours, and then you're on your way to the next site. Keeps your labor costs down, keeps your time on the site down, and more importantly, it avoids those callbacks from the end users. Should they have questions, you have that communication protocol there. So at the moment, Solarc is certainly a very popular brand because of the all-in-one. You have Schneider, which is also a very reputable brand that can be used in split phase or 3-phase and is a very good AC coupled option. You have the Victron, which can be used in different applications like RV, telecommunication, or just typical home energy storage. And then you do have brands like the SMA or Outback or Magnum, which have been tried and true and tested in the Outback world. So we spoke a little about the different applications that you can use. A lot of these inverters can do all these applications, but just like the Fortress battery, not one inverter, not one battery can do everything. So having a few options is certainly a good thing, depending on your experience and what you've used in the past. So keep in mind that per these different applications, we have many different inverters that you can consider for your project when you're putting out a bid or even just speaking with your customer. Now, with that said, we only have 2 batteries at the moment that we're holding. We have our eVault Max, which is our largest single unit battery. It's like the size of a mini fridge, for example, and the little sibling to the eVault Max, which is our eFlex 5.4. The eVault Max is our newest unit. It comes listed to UL 9540. It is testing for 9540A, and it is scalable up to a whopping 20 units or 370 kilowatt hours of backup. So that's why I always say from that residential, even to the small commercial, because our eVault Max can stack fairly high to get us up into those sizes or needed sizes. Now, the first question I get is, well, Alex, how in the heck would I parallel 20 of these batteries together? I always recommend running them on a common DC bus to where you can land all those connections for the battery. And then it also makes it easier for your cable management, and you're not paralleling many smaller batteries together like some of the other options on the market. Now, you will notice it comes with a local monitoring LCD display right on the front. So your end user or yourself can see the voltage of the battery, state of charge, the current, and the power. And it is the largest single unit that's approved with SGIP, the self-generation incentive program, at 17.7 kilowatt hours of AC. So for those of you working in California, this is more applicable to you. But if you do have those California-based projects, we are approved with SGIP, which is a statewide incentive in California. And I do want to say that both of our batteries can be used with the federal ITC tax credit if they are hooked up with solar. Now, because of its very big size and it being one large battery, it's going to be a very easy to install unit, right? Wheeling it onto site with its wheels, you're going to plug it into the inverter with that closed loop communication, and you're going to basically avoid having to parallel many smaller batteries together, doing your balance of systems, X, Y, and Z. So it's a very easy to install unit as one big battery. And me being biased, I think it looks very slick with the nice gray aluminum finish. And aesthetic is quite important for folks as they want to show off their battery to their neighbors, parents, in-laws, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll have the eVault Max that you can choose from as your first option, as one big battery that you roll onto site, has all the proper UL listings and the closed loop communication protocol with the inverters like Solark and Schneider that I had aforementioned. Next, we have our eFlex 5.4. So this is our more modular approach to something versus the eVault Max, to where we can put up to 15 of these in parallel for 80 kilowatt hours, but in increments of 5. So this may be more beneficial if your customer has a true kilowatt hour needed storage, as you cannot mix and match the units. So for example, if your customer needed 25 kilowatt hours, certainly one eVault Max wouldn't be enough, and two eVault Maxes may be a little bit more. So this is where I'd recommend the eFlex units, because you can put 5 or 6 of these in parallel as a more flexible sizing option. The key difference is that although it comes with all the UL listings, 9540A, 9540, 1973, et cetera, this unit comes with an IP65 rated aluminum enclosure. So this is outdoor rated. The eVault Max at the moment is just an indoor rated battery. So for your folks that need an outside installation because of space constraints or the jurisdiction having those kind of restrictions, we can certainly look at the eFlex and installing that outside on the floor or even just in a wall mountable setup. So it's somewhat corny, but the eFlex is very flexible in terms of the sizing, 5 to 80 kilowatt hour increments, along with installing it on the floor, on the wall, or even into our eFlex rack that we have, where you can stack up to 4 eFlexes per rack and then parallel those racks together. This unit, just like the eVault Max, has the closed loop communication with the inverters on that previous page, Solark and Schneider, for example, and is IoT ready. Now, one thing you'll notice is this ribbing on the top of the eFlex here. This is an integrated heatsink. So this is going to have 4 to 5 times better thermal performance when dealing with colder or warmer temperatures, especially since it's outdoor rated. Our recommended temperatures are 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 113 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you expect those temperatures to get outside of that range, I always recommend different solutions, whether it be on the heating side using heat tape or a trickle charging a space heater, or on the warmer side using different kind of ventilation applications to keep our recommended temperature between 32 degrees Fahrenheit and 113 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's recap quickly on the eFlex versus the eVault Max. eFlex, more modular, indoor-outdoor rated, can be installed in a rack or on the wall as a more modular option in the 80 kilowatt hour range. Then something as large as the eVault Max moves folks closer to whole home backup, as they can parallel up to 20 of these units together to get up to 370 kilowatt hours. You wheel in one big battery, set it up with your inverter of choice, and you are on your way. Easy as that with the eVault Max. Both have that closed loop communication, and both come fully UL listed up to the latest codes and requirements, i.e. 9540, and in the future 9540A, particularly for the eVault Max, which is going through testing now. So you have 2 main options of batteries that give you all sorts of flexibility with the projects that you're putting together, and whether they're off-grid, grid-tied, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the questions I typically get is, well, there's a lot of lithium batteries out there, right? What makes Fortress Power different than all these other batteries on the market? And quite frankly, why should I care? And the first thing that makes us different is the cell type, right? So you have some key things here with the cell type. You can see the 1 stars in the pouch cells and the cylindrical cells. So the pouch cells and cylindrical cells, it's a lower costing cell. And you can see here, they do not have the same durability, thermal stability, or even power density in comparison to the prismatic cells, which is what we use here at Fortress. So kind of the follow-up to that question is, well, why do I care? Because a lot of battery manufacturers will have a 10-year warranty up to X amount of cycles. Now, using the pouch cells or cylindrical cells may be a lower costing option, but you're not going to get, or it's going to be much more challenging to get up to those life cycle guarantees of 6,000, 8,000, or even 10,000 cycles in some instances if they're using a pouch or cylindrical cell. The prismatic cell we use is a tier 1 automotive grade prismatic cell, lithium iron phosphate. to where this is, in terms of the power density and durability, can handle a lot more cycling, power input and output versus the pouch or cylindrical cells. You'll see a lot more folks, I think, moving towards, prismatic cells because of the fact that they have been proven in the space in terms of lithium iron phosphate chemistry as the highest quality and the tried and true and tested solution versus the pouch or cylindrical cells. Now, again, not one application, not one approach can fit all the applications out there. So there may be other instances in a low cost project where a cylindrical cell battery may make the most sense. But our claim to fame is not being the cheapest battery. We want to be the highest quality battery at the most affordable price. So the first thing is prismatic cells, and that is ultimately going to affect the life cycle guarantees that we give here at Fortress, and ultimately it's going to determine how your customer uses the battery with a prismatic cell versus a cylindrical cell. Pretty straightforward in terms of what's inside the battery, right? And then we have the enclosure, right? What's on the outside of the battery? And we use an aluminum enclosure. So if you guys ever have the opportunity to see an eVault Max or an eFlex in person, recommend knocking on it. You can hear the aluminum, right? Aluminum we choose because it's not only salt waterproof, but it's also very resistant to rust corrosion, which is quite popular, especially if it's outdoor rated. And with the plastic or iron case that other battery providers are using, there is subject to saltwater corrosion and rusting. Typically, they're only for indoor rated installations only. And because of the factor of plastic and iron, it does make that possibility for maintenance to happen down the road versus aluminum while you're doing maintenance on parallel connections, the actual case itself, which is why we use the aluminum enclosure versus something like a plastic or iron. It's a lot more robust. We want to use the highest quality enclosure here and not skimp out and go with plastic or iron. Now, again, different applications call for different kinds of things. So, plastic and iron may make sense in certain areas, but most, I think, of what you'll see moving forward in the battery space, they'll be using aluminum or some other high quality enclosure. Excuse me, everybody. And that's why we use the aluminum enclosure. Let me get back on track. And then the last thing, so we talked about what kind of cell is it, right? It's a lithium battery, but we talked about the actual cell that's in the battery. We talked about what's protecting the battery, right? That enclosure. And now we're going to talk about the battery brain, right? The battery management system, otherwise known as a BMS. So we use a digital processor-based BMS with a mechanical fuse that opens and closes. This is the highest quality BMS up to the automotive standard and has a safe protection with a solid-state relay and fuse that, like I mentioned, opens and closes. This can handle high input and output power from inverters that are getting larger and larger as time goes on. One that comes to mind is the SolarArc 12 kW, has a very high input and output power. So using this BMS is going to have a much safer response time to the inverter's inrush current or input and output power versus something like a MOSFET-based BMS, which you guys can see here is just a piece of circuitry, right? It's a lower costing approach, but there is that potential for thermal runaway with a cheap MOSFET, as it does not have that same response time to a inverter's inrush current, for example, or high input and output power. So you can see the picture of it here. It's around yay big. It's included in the battery. There is no maintenance that you have to make on that. It's in the battery and ready to operate when you get the system and hook it up with the inverter. So we talked about the cell type, why that cell is important. We talked about the enclosure and why that's important. Then we also talk about the brains of the battery and why the brains or the BMS is one of the most important parts of the battery. And again, we don't want to be the lowest costing battery, but the highest quality battery with the best parts at the most affordable price. So you have the cell, the enclosure, and the BMS is really what makes us here at Fortress Power different than some of the other battery providers on the market. And we do have many different financing options available for those of you that use financing in your project designs or project scope. We are approved with LoanPal, Sunlight Financial, Enerbank USA, Lightstream, Mosaic, and most recently Dividend Finance. So if you guys have customers that do not want to pay cash over fist for their system, they can certainly use our approved financing partners as seen on the screen here for their project and help them move this project from point A to point B. A few other things we can help with here at Fortress Power is we do have many different sizing resources. So I always recommend to check out first and foremost, our website, www.fortresspower.com. There's sizing resources, integration resources, YouTube videos, training videos, our blog, the dealer resources tab, where if you get signed up, you get access to our dealer portal. A lot of extremely good resources on our webpage that I would recommend to anybody. We then have our YouTube channel where we're posting weekly YouTube videos on sizing. I do a few on how to sell energy storage and would recommend that if you are just getting into batteries or want to change your sales approach to selling energy storage in the right way to folks and not just selling it to get the sale. And then there are different third-party sizing tools you can use like Energy Stage or Energy Toolbase. So there is a plethora of sizing resources out there, starting with Fortress Power, and then looking at some different third-party websites that you can use, i.e. Energy Sage or Energy Toolbase for those commercial projects, specifically with ETB. So our service, we have a hands-on management team. We have a personalized client relations. You'd be working with me directly to help size and design your projects. We can also do co-marketing support and pass along leads. And we do have a very comprehensive technical support available. The first part of that is through our Discord channel, where you can log into our Discord and get slides to our PowerPoint presentations. You can join our discussion group. You can also get in line for our NAPCEP credit PowerPoint presentations that we do, and obviously technical support from our technical support team based in Philadelphia. So that is all I have for you here today. I have my contact information here in the bottom left, including my email and direct phone number. And if if I'm out of the office, for example, and there are questions, you can email the sales email. You can also email tech support at fortresspower.com for any technical support questions. And for submitting warranties or any warranty-based questions, you can email warranty@fortresspower.com, and my warranty team would be glad to help. So that's all I have for you here today. Thank you again for joining the webinar.
Good stuff, Alex. Thanks so much for presenting for us today. Appreciate it. Thank you, Andy, for joining. Appreciate you taking the time. Just wanted to emphasize that we are stocking both the eVault Max and the eFlex 5.4 here. We are also stocking some of the inverter partners that Alex mentioned before, both the Solark and Schneider are both fully in stock on our shelves here. So trying to be more of a one-stop shop for these battery-based installs, and went with Fortress, and because of their great product, excellent support from Alex. So yeah, we're excited to have Fortress here on the shelves and ready to sell some product.
Yeah, Riley, thank you for sharing that, and also thank you for putting this together with me here. So CD has been a great partner with us in the past, so I would recommend to go through them. And I think that's all I got for you here, guys, today. I'm going to stop the recording.